What's going on, everybody? Expectations for a 50 basis and a 25 basis point cut are pretty much neck and neck again, almost a 50-50. They're currently a 55-45 to be exact. The Fed is going to announce their rate decision, and I'll leave a link down below for you guys so you can easily access it, but by the time you watch this, it may have already been made. And as a side note, remember guys, the next thing to look out for is going to be PCE. But let's get into this video. We're going to talk about Cleanspark news. We're going to talk about this article from Blackrock. Blackrock believes Bitcoin's a unique diversifier. What does that mean? We're going to find out in this video. And this is going to be my first time reading over this article, so let's read it together. And then we'll look at Bitcoin and Cleanspark on the chart, look at that Cleanspark news. Now, Blackrock released a new report explaining why Bitcoin is a unique portfolio diversifier, detached from other assets. It's in a league of its own. The world's largest asset manager continues embracing Bitcoin as adoption gains mainstream acceptance. And BlackRock's ETF, despite a few days recently of outflows, a few days of no flows, despite this recent lackluster performance, IBIT has still seen $21 billion flow into assets under management through that fund. And in this new report, it explains that Bitcoin, while volatile, is fundamentally detached from other asset classes. Bitcoin's adoption depends on global concerns over monetary stability, geopolitics, fiscal policy, political stability, the inverse of traditional risk assets. The inverse. It is kind of the opposite of a risk-on asset. That's basically what that paragraph is trying to say. Bitcoin, as the first decentralized, non-sovereign, monetary alternative to gain widespread global adoption, has no traditional counterparty risk, depends on no centralized system, and is not driven by any one country's fortunes. And this is clearly a step in becoming mainstream for Bitcoin. The spot Bitcoin ETFs being approved this year and going live this year is a massive achievement for Bitcoin. And it's something we didn't even think about last cycle, something that wasn't even talked about. Last cycle, something that was heavily talked about was, can Bitcoin be banned? Completely different narrative this cycle than last cycle. So many people last cycle had fears of Bitcoin actually being like taken away, being banned. Now it just seems like it's totally different. No one's even thinking of, can Bitcoin be like taken away, be banned, be exiled? It can't. It's a part of Wall Street now. The largest companies in the world are now embracing Bitcoin. It is not going away. I'm sorry, but it's not. Now I got one more article to go over before we talk about this Cleanspark news. Crypto and commodities poised. Crypto and commodities are set for a massive rally. According to Michael Vandepop, an upcoming surge in global liquidity fueled by debt refinancing could trigger the next Bitcoin bull run. And here's something very interesting. Look at commodities versus the S&P. Commodities have fallen off a cliff. And outside in these quotations, commodities and crypto are extremely undervalued. It's likely that commodities go into a 10-year long bull market. I'm expecting a lot of upside from these two asset classes. And this index shows commodities valued at lower levels compared to the bubble of 2000, the tech bubble. And in this article, we also have WEBULL talking about global liquidity, something huge for Bitcoin, a major factor. I think almost as important as the 4-year cycle, the halving cycles. These are, in my opinion, the two largest factors for Bitcoin. An incoming rise in global liquidity could catalyze the next Bitcoin bull rally. And according to WEBULL, this is mainly because the leading economies will be forced to refinance their debts. As global liquidity rises, cryptos will rise as well, as will other markets like the Nasdaq. Global M2 is starting to rise. And actually I want to show you guys really quick on my Discord. I did post this a while ago, but it's a really good graph that shows how M2 grows and then Bitcoin has its cycles. And they basically, the 4-year cycle and M2 growth is very similar in their trajectories, very similar how they move. And now we are on that next leg up for M2 growth, that next leg up for Bitcoin. Global M2 started growing in 2016, again in 2019, and now in 2024. This combined with halving years are major factors for Bitcoin's price, probably the two largest factors dictating the direction. Now looking at Bitcoin, we are slightly red today, about a 1% down day. I'm keeping an eye on this trend, this uptrend we're in. On shorter time frames, it's a lot more clear. But keep an eye on this trend. If we do break this support, we might head lower, test, 58, come down and test lower levels if 58 doesn't hold. But 58 is an important level. We're just breaking 60, it looks like. Maybe we can regain it by the end of the day if we see a run by the end of the day with the FOMC. We'll see what happens. It is going to be a volatile day. We've been seeing the RSI cool down while the price is rising. This is an RSI divergence, so we might be due to cool down a little bit, like I said. Test that 58,000, see if it holds up. But so far our inverse head and shoulders is playing out beautifully, kind of similar to this one back here. You'll see that I showed you guys before, we had like a 17 to 19% move on this inverse head and shoulders. If we see the same, we are almost there already, but if we see the same, this would bring us to about 62,000. So we'll see if this gets us there to 62,000 or so. On our longer term trend that started back in March, we are in a downtrend. So we need to break out of this descending resistance. This is crucial. I want to see this happen in Q4 at some point. We need to break this resistance. If Q4 is bad, if Q4 plays out differently than any other cycle, maybe the cycles are broken. But so far, we have no reason to think that. Let me remind you guys, Bitcoin does this. Back in 2023, we saw this kind of a downwards consolidation, a descending trend. And then we broke above it. We barely broke out of our previous levels before we started heading back down again. Everyone got shaken out. Everyone got fearful. Everyone got worried, thinking, oh crap, is the cycle gonna play out? Why is it like in a downtrend kind of? And then we broke out, went on a rally. And I can show you back in 2020, we had a very similar thing play out. You'll see this long downtrend we were in for multiple months, a long time, similar to what we're experiencing now. And then what did we do? We took out our local high, took out the high that we set in that cycle, and then took out the previous cycle high. Once we took out the previous cycle high, you'll see it kind of stopped there for a second. We went parabolic. We already took our previous cycle high out, likely due to the ETFs and all that buying pressure there. But next is breaking that 74,000. Once we start taking out our previous resistances, getting back over 65,000 area, getting back over 69,000, the previous resistance of last cycle, and getting to that 74,000, once we break that, we are going to go parabolic. If history is any indicator of what we should see this cycle. For now, we're in a multi-month downtrend, but we are in a slight uptrend now. On the short term, we need to see this maintain. Remember, September is typically seen as a bad month. We started the month out at like 59,000, we dumped down to 52, and it's been recovering since. So maybe we do in fact end September flat, if not red. If we can maintain 60,000, get a little over 60,000, we might actually have a slightly green September. But I think what really matters is Q4. We're expecting that Q4 end of year rally. If we don't see it, I'll be very surprised. We are approaching M2 global supply growing. We're at the perfect time in the Bitcoin halving cycles. And there are many headwinds that are no longer headwinds for us, and I've gone over them before. Now let's get into this news. We have some news from Cleanspark. Cleanspark acquires 2 additional sites in Mississippi, closes a second site in Wyoming. These Mississippi acquisitions have a combined purchase price of $5.775 million and supports a total of 16.5 megawatts. The site will be delivered to the company turnkey ready with an expected completion date of December 1 of 2024. Upon completion and installation, the site will house S21 Pro miners with an expected combined operating hash rate of approximately 1 exahash per second. The addition of these sites will bring the company's data center portfolio in Mississippi to 60.5 megawatts. On September 11, the company closed its previously announced 45 megawatt site in Wyoming. The site's expected to contribute an additional 3 exahash to the company's hash rate. The site will feature immersion-cooled Bitcoin mining centers, which will support the latest generation S29 immersion XPs. And as said by Zach Bradford, including today's announcement, our operational capacity has soared over the last 7 days, totaling 211.5 megawatts of new capacity. That's an increase of nearly 38%, which will not only support our target of 37 exahash by end of 2024, but also our target of 50 exahash per second in 2025. Cleanspark has been rough the last couple of months, but those of you that have been here for a long time, you know the deal. Those of you that are OGs are probably not worried at all. Cleanspark is still way over our cost basis. Let the naysayers say that Cleanspark sucks, that Cleanspark's a bad company, but in reality, the OGs here, we know what the deal is. We know this is a solid company, and we know that these execs know exactly what they're doing. Those of you complaining about dilution, refer to last cycle. You'll be amazed. Now, looking at Cleanspark's chart, we are setting up in a descending wedge. We'll see if the market reacts to it, but we are potentially approaching the breakout. Right around the Fed meeting, just so happens we're about to potentially break this pattern. This could be a good move. One thing to be aware of is we do still have a gap down here in the 7s we almost came down to, but we did not fill it. Maybe we have one final shakeout, brings us down into the 7s, low 7s. But you know, regardless of that, if you look at Cleanspark as a company long term, who cares if you bought at 7, if you bought at 8, if you bought at 9? I don't think that matters much. That's kind of like going back here and being like, well, I don't know, I don't really want to buy it at $2.50, I'll wait for like 2. Or I don't want to buy it at 2, I'll wait for $1.50. Or I don't want to buy it at $1.50, I'll wait till $1. At some point, if it's a company you like, you have to nibble at it. You have to buy if you like the company long term. If it's not your strategy to buy something in a downtrend, then avoid it. And while on the shorter term, it's definitely in a downtrend, I would argue that on the longer term, I mean, look at the weekly. To me, this looks like it's still in an uptrend. It looks like it's still heading higher. And look at last cycle. Last cycle, we were down in the dollar area, kind of similar to this cycle, a little higher. In the bear market this cycle, we got down to like 170. But anyways, this last cycle, the 2020 cycle, we got down to the 113 area. It ran all the way up. There were dips along the way, of course, but it ran all the way up to $15 before dumping, losing 50%, if not a little bit more actually, going from 15 all the way down to 7 before recovering and running up to the 40s. That's right. There are going to be major corrections. This was right around after the halving too. Miners taking half the rewards. It's going to take a little bit of time for them to recover. That's what we've been watching. Cleanspark absolutely rallied. It was in the $1.70 range, ran all the way to the 20s. Now we cooled down. Now we're at like 9. The halving took effect. Miners are taking half the rewards. They have to regain profitability. Cleanspark was one of the few Bitcoin miners that were profitable pre-halving. Not many were. In the end, you have to gain your own conviction for a stock like Cleanspark. I can't make you like it. I suggest you look into it yourself. There are definitely going to be people that think a stock like this sucks because all they're looking at is the last couple months. Maybe they got in a little late. Maybe they bought it at like 24. When we were talking about potentially selling calls on things that have ran up. In the end, you want to buy things while they're low, especially if you have conviction in them. In my opinion, Cleanspark's a great buy at 9, 8, 7. What matters is exposure. What matters is getting a hold of the Bitcoin miners you like for this cycle. Whether it's Bitfarms, whether it's Cleanspark, whether it's Iron, whether it's a miner I like or don't like, follow what you like and buy it. This is the time to be in the Bitcoin miners, in my opinion. While they're beaten down, while no one wants them. Things can change quickly. Remember, a few months ago, everyone seemed to want them. Everyone was preaching how Cleanspark was going to keep rallying. It went up to $24. Don't get FOMO at the top. Don't buy when it's been rallying. Buy while it's low. Buy after it's sold off. I can't tell you what to do, but that's just my strategy. Everyone's got a different strategy. Sometimes you set a stop loss and only ride an uptrend and avoid any downwards drops. But if you're talking about a company you want good exposure in, that you want to scale in, you want to take advantage and accumulate while it's low. Everyone's got a different strategy though. Let me know yours. Do you think Cleanspark is going lower or higher? Do you think Cleanspark's already topped out this cycle in the 20s? Do you think Bitcoin's already topped out this cycle? If so, you probably don't want to be buying the Bitcoin miners or Bitcoin. But I do personally think we are going to see the halving cycles play out. We're about to have a ton of liquidity pump into the market, and this will benefit Bitcoin. This will benefit risk on assets. This will benefit Bitcoin proxies. And in my opinion, this is like buying Cleanspark last cycle back in September and October when it was $7 before it ran to the 40s. Interesting, huh? Interesting timeline, isn't it? Similar pullback, similar timeline. Last cycle right around the same time before we ran. Funny correlation there. We are basically here in this cycle. Maybe history repeats. Maybe we see Cleanspark go absolutely parabolic. Maybe it does half this. Maybe it only runs to the 20s again. If Bitcoin rallies, the Bitcoin miners are profitable again. If the Bitcoin miners can be consistently profitable, that means as companies they are even better. They don't need FOMO. They're profitable companies. But anyways, let me know what Bitcoin miners you guys are buying, or are you avoiding them at this time in the cycle? Is it too late in the cycle for you? And by the time you watch this, the Fed meeting might already be going on. We might already get our rate decision. For now, it is pretty neck and neck. I'm still thinking it's going to be a 25 basis point cut. I think that would be a good sign for the economy. If we go in heavier, there might be some concerns raised. But anyways, thanks as always for watching, guys. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one.